thanks in part to pop culture. The Vikings have a reputation for being ruthless, marauding cutthroats sailing the icy North Sea, searching for a village to plunder. In reality, the Vikings were much more than sword-swinging invaders. They were accomplished farmers and builders, sailors and explorers. In open longboats, they crossed the vast ocean, discovered faraway lands long before other Europeans. The age of the Vikings lasted from about 792 to 1066 CE. During that time, the Vikings amassed wealth, power, and territory as they organized their society, tormented the Brits, and developed their complex mythology. Perhaps one reason why the Vikings have become so popular in today's pop culture is that their history is filled with colorful characters. Names like Eric Bloodaxe, Bjorn Ironside, Ragnar Lothbrok, Eric the Red, Ivar the Boneless, and Leif Erikson have left an indelible footprint on world history. During the height of the Viking Age, they were a force to be reckoned with. Their culture was unique because it wasn't tied to a single country, and there was no central government ruling over all Vikings. Although they invaded foreign lands and sought out undiscovered places, they didn't attempt to build a cohesive empire like the Romans. What they had in common was their origin in the Scandinavian region, what is now Norway, Finland, Sweden, and Denmark, and a shared language. The daring adventures of the Vikings were recorded in sagas and chronicles, assembled from oral stories. Centuries later, these stories were probably embellished, which has obscured some historical facts but also given us exciting tales of hero warriors and legendary feats of strength. The Vikings, it seems, had a true lust for adventure. They sailed from their northern homelands to coastal areas around Europe, exposing themselves to the wealth of other cultures ripe for the picking. In 793 CE, Viking raiders sacked a helpless seaside monastery on the British Isles, an event that launched the Viking Age. The ease of the raid and the riches they plundered only whet their appetite. Soon, they were dividing their time between farming their land and sailing off to plunder coastal communities in Britain and beyond. The Viking sagas are filled with characters. Among them is Ragnar Lothbrok, a figure who has caused much debate among historians. Most believe Ragnar wasn't a real person but a composite of other real-life heroes. Lothbrok was the very picture of a Viking warrior with a cool name to match, but wasn't his given last name. It was a nickname, meaning hairy breeches or shaggy pants. Not only were his trousers unwashed, but Ragnar also had little regard for the sanctity of religious artifacts. He led raids on churches and monasteries on the British Isles and in France. Legend says he even attacked Paris in 800, navigating his longboat upriver from the coast. Ragnar Lothbrok died shortly after his return from Paris. One story says he succumbed to an illness he picked up on his travels, which isn't a very heroic end. A second, more famous version claims the Viking was captured by a Northumbrian king, King Ella, and tossed into a pit of vipers. In doing so, King Ella would have to face the wrath of Ragnar's son, Ivar the Boneless. No record remains to tell us how Ivar the Boneless got his strange nickname, leaving us to imagine our own scenarios. But despite his name, Ivar was a brutal and cunning warrior. It was Ivar who, in 800, led a massive invasion known as the Great Heathen Army to conquer England. This time, the Vikings weren't interested in a smash-and-grab campaign. They wanted to establish a permanent settlement on the British Isles. For a brief time, Ivar ruled over much of England. He attempted to broker peace by uniting some English tribes, but he also created chaos by murdering 3 English kings. After executing King Edmund of East Anglia, Ivar returned to his marauding ways. But he had changed the tide of the Vikings from raiders to colonizers. Ivar the Boneless wasn't the only son of Ragnar Lothbrok to impact European history. Another son, Bjorn Ironside, became the king of Sweden and established a dynasty that held the throne for several generations. Occasionally, however, he set aside his crown to do what Vikings did best: raiding and plundering. Bjorn Ironside's claim to fame is that he attacked villages along the French and Spanish coasts and sailed through the Straits of Gibraltar in 8 to lay siege to the Mediterranean. Bjorn may have been the Viking king of Sweden, but the first true king of Norway was another warrior named Harald Fairhair. During his reign, from 872 to 930, Harald Fairhair united several minor Viking kingdoms under his rule. History is split on its evaluation of him. Some accounts say he was fair and just, helping to lay the foundation of the country. Others say he was violent and forcibly sent settlers to the newly discovered Iceland. Still, Harald is considered the father of Norway. He was also the father of several sons, including Eric Blood. Upon Harald Fairhair's death, his son Eric Bloodaxe assumed the throne, but not without violence and bloodshed. According to legend, the ruthless and barbaric Eric killed his own brothers, who challenged his claim to the throne. Only one brother, Hakon the Good, was left unscathed and eventually wore the crown after Eric left Norway to establish a settlement in York. From there, he raided coastal villages in Scotland and Ireland. During Harald Fairhair's reign, the family of Ig Skallagrimson left Norway and settled in Iceland. There, in 910, Egil was born. Although Egil was a fierce Viking warrior, he was also one of the greatest Scandinavian poets of the Viking era. He wrote a type of epic poem called Sk, which were written to boast about one's exploits and brave deeds. These poems served as an oral record of battles and other historic events for the Vikings. In 960, the Danish king Harald Bluetooth, for whom our modern wireless technology is named, welcomed a son who later became known as Sweyn. According to sagas, Sweyn seized the Danish throne from his father. Soon after, he left Denmark to lead an attack on London. Known for his long beard that split in two thanks to a deep cleft in his chin, Sweyn failed in his first campaign against London and was forced to regroup. He returned to Denmark to regain his throne, then launched another attack on London. This time, he encountered little resistance. On Christmas Day in 1014, he was crowned the King of England. But he died just 5 weeks later, from a fatal fall from his horse. Sweyn has since been called the forgotten King of England, while the Vikings worshipped their own pagan gods. Christianity was spreading across Europe. It was only natural that they would encounter Christians who sought to convert them. When Viking traders began to lose business to Christian traders, many took to wearing a cross when doing business with Christian merchants, only to replace it with Thor's hammer once the deal was done. Some Vikings, however, became ardent believers. One of the most notable was Olaf Tryggvason, fresh from a plundering mission to England. In 996, Olaf returned to Norway to find the people had turned on their ruler. Olaf joined the rebellion, raised an army, and easily defeated the ruler to assume the throne for himself. This made Olaf the first Christian king of Norway, and he used his new position to convert his people by any means possible, including torture, beatings, banishment, and murder. King Olaf wasn't content to see just Norway become a Christian nation. He tried to spread Christianity to Iceland and Greenland as well, but he hit a snag. Without going there himself, he couldn't use fear and intimidation to convert the population. He had to find another way. In 997, the son of Eric the Red, Leif Erikson, visited Norway. Olaf took the young Viking under his wing, convinced him to embrace Christianity, and tasked him with spreading it to the Viking settlements in Iceland and Greenland. The King of Norway, with the distinction of being the last great Viking ruler, was Harald called Harald Hardrada, a nickname meaning hard ruler. Harald Hardrada was ambitious and clever. He traveled to Jerusalem, Constantinople, and other parts of Europe, gathering knowledge of the world alongside his riches. Back in Norway, he engaged in war with Denmark until he, like many great Vikings before him, set his sights on the British Isles. England's King Edward the Confessor died without an heir, and Harold was one of many who tried to claim the title. When he didn't get it, he fought for it. He met the new king, Harold Godwinson, on the battlefield in 1066. Harald Hardrada took an arrow through the neck, ensuring a victory for God. But Godwinson had little time to revel in his win. Just a few weeks later, he was defeated at the Battle of Hastings by William the Conqueror. The Viking era was a time of discovery and expansion, but that progress was punctuated with war, brutality, and violence. The Vikings' reputation for barbarity was well earned, but it doesn't tell the whole story. While raiding and pillaging were common, there were also expert sailors, explorers, and navigators who colonized Iceland and Greenland. Their exploits in Europe forever altered Western history. Their thirst for blood and adventure added to their legends and propelled the Vikings of yesteryear into the pop culture heroes of today. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button and subscribe for more videos just like this. Thanks for watching.